Hello, this is Jose Luis here at Parametric Camp and welcome to another video in our mini-series Fun with DALL-E. This video is not about DALL-E, this video is actually about GPT and ChatGPT, and what I would like to show you and to teach you in this video is how to build a web app that does and feel this like the same thing as ChatGPT. So basically it's an app where you can go and enter your API key for OpenAI, some kind of prompt, and say, well, can you give me a text completion? Can you just give me respond to this question or something? And in this case, I'm asking for the story of an invisible city full of dreamful architects. And as you can see, the completion is been really nice. There was an invisible city full of dreamful architects. Once upon a time, this city was hidden from the world, tucked away in a secret corner of the universe, populated by a diverse amount of people. It's very, very nice. Why are we doing this? Well, in the previous videos, I have shown you extensively how to create text-to-image using the DALL-E API in OpenAI. But as you can imagine, text-to-image is not the only thing that OpenAI is really good at. And very recently, they published ChatGPT, which has been a very popular app powered by the large language model GPT-3. And then just like we were using the image generation API, we can go to the text completion API and see that using this endpoint and sticking to these parameters for the body and this for the request, we can actually build something very, very similar to the actual ChatGPT function that they have, the ChatGPT web app that OpenAI has. So if I now send the script for a YouTube video where the host builds a web app using the text completion API in OpenAI, ChatGPT is taking a little bit of time to crunch that, but it's going to start very soon popping out some kind of completion for that. I think so. I think it's thinking. Is it thinking? But it's not. Well, anyway, so we have built it here, right? My point being that this is actually quite easy to do manually. And you can see that I did build a web app and I uploaded it to a subsection of our parametric.camp website. And you can find it under GPT if you want to try it yourself. The code for this web app is going to be available on a link here in the description of this video. And I'm going to show you how I built this locally using HTML, CSS, and especially JavaScript. I'm going to go a little fast, especially on the HTML and CSS, because I basically already did this in the previous video in this series. And I'm going to focus more on how to do DOM manipulation, how to fetch the information from the prompts, and how to build the request body of the request, the parameters, and how to make that request using the fetch API, and how to handle the response so that the requests start showing up here. All right. So this is what we got. This is the result, and this is what we're going to build together. Are you excited about this? Your own ChatGPT? This is cool also because you can extend this project to now build a full chatbot with different chat rooms, different people, modifying the response, being more creative, whatever you think. The sky is your limit, okay? So let's talking and more coding. Let me show you my take on building a simple ChatGPT-like application, all right? Let's dive into it. How are we going to start doing this? Well, I'm going to, if you haven't watched the previous video in this series where I was teaching you how to make a web app to use the DALL-E API to do image generation, then I will definitely recommend that you check out that video first, because in that video I went over the details of how to build the UI and how to build the web, etc., etc. And in this video, I'm going to skip through that part and I'm going to go straight into building the functionality. So if you haven't seen that video, there's going to be a pop-up showing up here, a label, a link showing up on the somewhere on the screen with a link to the DALL-E web app, and there might be a description or a link to that video in the description as well. Okay, so but the technique that we're going to use for text generation as if it was ChatGPT, is going to be very similar to the one we used when we were doing text to image generation. So if you remember, what we did was we went to the OpenAI documentation and we found the create image endpoint, and we saw like, oh, we have to make a post request to this URL. The request needs to have this kind of information, and what we will get in response will be this, an object with all the information that we have requested. Well, it turns out that ChatGPT, is basically a model that falls under the category of text completion. So if we go to the documentation and into text completion, you're going to see like a very long explanation of how it works, the token system, classification, how it was trained, ways to improve the accuracy, and a lot of like, let's say, like nice description. That was a very terrible way of saying, like a lot of explanations of how the model works. But if you actually want to go straight to the documentation of the API, you can click here and you can see that for completions, the completion API has an endpoint, which is basically this URL, which means that the post request, instead of going to the image generation, it goes to this particular URL here, and that the request needs to look something like this. So the body needs to have which model we're using. It needs to have the text, how many tokens we're using, which are kind of like words, not exactly, etc. Or the temperature and the top peak, which basically mean how precise or how crazy the response you want to have, okay? If you want to learn more about what those means, I definitely recommend you check the documentation, okay? How many completions do we want? And a couple of other parameters that I will explain very soon. And what we will get will be a response that will look something like this. We will get some information about the request, and then instead of a data array like we used to have with the images, we will get a choices array which will have all the completions generated for the same prompt. So if we want more than one, we will have multiple elements in the choices array. So essentially what we're going to do is basically the same thing that we did for text to image generation, but we're going to change the endpoint, we're going to change the request body, and we're going to change how we handle the response because they have a different format. But the technique using building a simple UI in HTML and then using JavaScript to retrieve the information, make a fetch request to this endpoint with the information in the proper format, and then handling the response is going to be exactly the same, okay? So let me show you how that is going to look like and where are we going to start. For this example, I've done it like in the previous video. I created a folder, it's called WebGPT, and then if we double click, you can see that I have the basic structure of a website. I have a root index HTML in JS. I have a JavaScript file that is right now empty. I have deleted everything, and I have a basic CSS file. I have loaded this folder into my Visual Studio Code, and you can see that the HTML, I'm not going to complete this manually. If you're interested in how to do this, I really recommend you check my previous video where we build the web app for text to image, okay? But we're going to have, and I have my live server here that is right now connected to Chrome. So whenever I make any changes here, like blah, 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 this gets reloaded automatically, okay? Beautiful. And then what I have built is a simple UI where I have a box here for the API key, correct? I have the prompt, so the text that I want, so the question that I'm asking GPT, if you will. Then I have a choice for the 4 models that are currently supported and as the recording of this video, which is, what are we? This is January 2023, right? DaVinci being the best one, the one that is built on top of ChatGPT, right? And then older models that are less accurate, less grammatically, syntactically good, but are faster and also cheaper, by the way, because every time we press the button, this costs money, all right? And then the maximum tokens, so how long you want the text to be, and this is roughly equivalent to words, not exactly, but roughly, and then the temperature, which means how accurate or how crazy you want the response. In our case, 0 means a really, really clear, accurate response, and 1, I believe it means like a bit more of a crazy, and you can be somewhere in the middle, okay? So right now, this is just the front end because nothing is working. I have added some styles so for things to look a little nicer, but the script file that is attached to this is absolutely empty. This is what we're going to build together here. So if you want to set yourself to start and build this with me as you watch this video, what I recommend is that you go to the project files. There's a link in the description of this video where you can download this project finalized, right? And then just go to the script file, the JavaScript, delete everything, and build it with me as you watch this video if you want to learn and you want to practice as we do this together, okay? Beautiful. So let's start by the basics. The first thing that I would like to make is I want to pick up the request button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a variable request button, and I'm going to fetch from the DOM, I'm going to fetch that button. All right. And then what I'm going to do is for that request button, I'm going to attach some behavior. I'm going to say whenever this is clicked, I want you to do something. And that something is going to be what? So I'm going to fetch, for example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to retrieve information that is important for the request. I'm going to copy and paste here. I'm going to speed into this because we just did this in the previous video, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to retrieve the API key, which is here. So I'm taking this from the text box. The prompt is going to be, I'm going to select the text box and I'm going to take the value. And then for the model, I'm going to iterate over all the radio buttons and I'm going to pick up the one that is checked and store that as part of the model. Then I'm going to turn these tokens. So I'm going to fetch from the token count element. I'm going to read the value and turn it into a number. And the temperature, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to get the element by ID that is called temperature. I'm going to read the value and I'm going to turn it into a number. And with this, I have now all the values individually of what I need for my request, okay? What that means is that with these individual values, what I can do now is I can create a request body, a JSON object that conforms to the standard that is needed for our request, okay? So what's that going to look like? I'm going to copy and paste this again, all right? So I'm going to say, well, I'm going to make a request body where I'm going to have, and let me dock this here on the right side. So completions, create completion. What is the example? Yes. So I have the model, which I took from here. I have the prompt, which I also took from the UI, the tokens and the temperature. We have them here. I'm going to hard code top P to be somewhere in the middle, because I read in the documentation that it's not good to tinker with both the temperature and top P. So it's good to either work with one or the other. So I'm going to, as a design decision, to let the users only play with the temperature. And then we're not going to stream. Stream is a way to have the API, instead of give you the full result at once, which takes a bit more time, to just send you bits and pieces. So if you remember from when I showed the ChatGPT example, you remember how the words were adding up, right? So that's how that effect is done. It's just that handling a request that is a stream response is way, way more involved than just getting the full thing at once. So to keep it simple, we're going to just do that ourselves here. And then we're not going to do log props. And then when I was preparing for this stream, I noticed that the documentation tells you that a good way to control where the GPT model stops is to give it a character and say, whenever you find this character, you're welcome to stop. And in the documentation, it has the new line character. However, I was trying this out and I was basically getting empty responses, which was very strange. And then I was looking through I was doing some Googling and people were saying that they were having problems with this. So for the sake of this video, I've decided to just not have a stop symbol, right? And then to make sure things are working so far, I'm going to dump to the console the request body here, okay? And let's see if this works. So I have my API key, my prompt, whatever. I'm going to request this. And you can see that the model is that right now my app is dumping here in the console, is dumping the object that we're going to use as the request body for the request to our endpoint. Okay, beautiful. So with this, we're probably good. I think the next thing that we want to do is to actually make the request. So in order to do that, we're going to use the same technique we use for text to image, which was basically going to be to create a request, to make that request, and then to handle the response. So if you remember, we did something that looked like this. So we created a second object where we said the parameters for the request are that this is a post request, not get, not delete, not put. These are the headers which include the API key, which we already fetched from here, okay? And then we stringify the request body, because since this is going to go through the internet is very good at transmitting strings, but it's not great at transmitting native JSON objects. So that's why we need to stringify this. Beautiful. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fetch the response. So first of all, we're going to give ourselves we're going to create a variable that is going to be the endpoint here. So let's get the endpoint, all right? And this is the same as the one that we saw in the documentation, this one here. This is where we want to send our requests. And then what I would like to do is I'm going to fetch, all right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fetch the GPT endpoint. That's what I'm going to point at. I'm going to use the request parameters that I have defined here. And then because, again, this is asynchronous, I'm going to prepare, like, whenever this resolves, I want you to call this function. And this function is a function that I'm going to define on the fly. So it's a function that is going to take some kind of response, and it's going to take that response and it's going to serialize the body of the response to a JSON file. And because this is also an asynchronous object that returns, a asynchronous function that returns a promise, I'm also going to handle whenever that resolves what needs to happen. And for the time being, what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a function that is going to take the JSON object that has been deserialized and is going to just print it to the console so that we can see if the response is working or not. So ChatGPT, I'm going to write 32 tokens here because I'm a little cheap. I want to save some money while I debug, right? And I'm going to do ADA, which is the cheaper model, but also the fastest one, okay? So I'm going to do that and I'm going to press the request. And then you can see that the request went through and that in the logs, I can see that I got a completion with the information of when it was created, etc., the choices, and I get one choice, which is in a city of towering buildings and bright colors, the blah, blah, blah. I don't know, because I can't see it well in the console. But it does look like it's working. It does look like it's getting results back from the server. So with this, the only thing that we need to do now is we need to change this from a dump in the console to something that adds that text here to the box. Let me show you how to do that. For this part, I might do it a bit more manually than the copy pasting that we've been doing before. So what are we going to do? I'm going to define a function just like we had in the previous example for text to image. I'm going to create a function that is going to be called add text. And this add text is going to get some JSON data. And it's going to take that data and it's going to add text elements that are going to show up here in the completions. All right. So what is that going to look like? Well, first of all, I need to retrieve the container. So that's going to be the text container. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say const container is going to be document.getElement by ID. All right. And then what I'm going to do here is, if you remember, the completions API told us that whenever we get a completion, it has this element called choices, which is an array with all the completions. And then inside of it, text is what we're targeting. So what I would like to do is basically with a for loop, go over all the elements So I is less than JSON data dot choices dot length I plus plus, and then let choice equals JSON data dot choices dot I. Okay. And then what I would like to do is I would like to make an object that I'm going to attach here, which is going to have that text. Okay. So how is that going to look? Well, let me, for example, say I'm going to create a div object. That's going to be, for example, text. The answer is going to be document.createElement. It's going to be a division object because remember, when we were doing HTML, wrapping everything inside of a div ended up being nicer because then things don't stack on top of each other side by side. It was just not nice. So it's always nice to have a division if you want things stacked line by line, to have a division and then inside of it have whatever you want to render. So what I'm going to do is answer div is going to be a div, all right? And then for the answer div, the class name is I'm going to define it as an answer because I want this div to get some styles. I do have some styles here, which is that anything that is an answer is going to get like this light gray kind of background color. So that's why I'm attaching to the class names this answer so that it gets properly styled. Then inside, what I would like to do is I'm going to create now an answer paragraph. So I'm going to create document.getElement. No, actually, this is not getElement. Sorry, create element. That's what I wanted to do. Create element, and this is of the type paragraph. Sorry for that. And then in answer p dot inner HTML, I want to store the text that I got as a completion. So from choice, I want to fetch the text property. And that's going to be the paragraph that I'm going to display. Correct? And then remember, because the paragraph is going to be inside of the div, then what I need to do is I'm going to say from the answer div, I want to append this object, the answer paragraph. So now one object lives inside of the other. The paragraph lives inside of the div element. And then once we have that, to the container, I would like to prepend so that it shows at the top. I would like to prepend the answered division, which already contains the paragraph because I have attached them one nested into the other. Correct? And I believe this should work. Let me give this a try. So we have this, a small model, DaVinci, Ada, and I'm going to request, and boom, this is not showing up. Oh yeah, because I have created the function, but I haven't linked it here. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to say, well, whenever you're done with your JSON, just run this image, this function, sorry, add text, just run this function with the JSON file as an input. Okay, I'm going to do this, 32, I'm going to choose Ada and then request. Nice, and then some blah, 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 and I'm going to request, and then it gets added here, and some foo, bear, bus, and then I'm going to request it, and then I don't even know what that means. A bar that is located in a Sweeney town. Okay, fine. Beautiful. Okay, this is great, but I want to be a little nicer because since this text is coming from some questions, what I want to do is to also kind of have like add the question and then add the answer both together as different elements. All right. So what I would like to do is I would like to also add the prompt box before. So I would like to add this to the prompt. What that means is I'm going to create a div with a question, also add a class. I'm going to create a paragraph inside, and inside I'm going to store the prompt. But the prompt, I don't have it anywhere, right? So I don't have the prompt as part of the response. So something that I would need to do is somehow connect the prompt that I had here with this. The way to do that is that, first of all, this function is going to accept also a prompt. And then here I'm going to rewrite this to say, well, whenever you are done parsing the JSON, then I'm going to define a function that is going to take the JSON. And then once it has the JSON, it's going to call the add text function. And it's going to pass that JSON object, but also the prompt that was available here as a variable. Okay? So instead of passing the function as a callback, what I'm doing is I am creating an anonymous function here that is taking the input JSON, and then inside that function, it's calling the add text function with that argument and with additional data here. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to run this here, add a request, and then, what happened here? Oh, I didn't append it to the container. So now what I want to do is I want to prepend here, and I want to prepend the question. I want to the question div and the answer div, one after the other. So 32, add a request, and here we go. We got the prompt, and then we got the response, and blue, and blah, 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 and then this and that. And it goes all the way to the top because I am prepending here. All right. Beautiful. All right. And I think with this, we are probably a good way to go. However, I'm going to show you something that I did offline and that I would like you to see, just like to make this a little more sparkly, if you will. So something quite interesting that the GPT model gives us with the response is this. So if for every choice, there is a property called finish reason, which means that the model tells us why the model decided to stop generating any more text. That could have basically two options. One being the option that it exhausted how many words it got to the length that you specified and therefore it stopped generating any more text. Or sometimes the model decides that whatever it was meant to say, it said it in a complete and closed way. So it decides to stop generating because the meaning and the content is already good enough. Okay, so that is a property that comes with the response finish reason. So what I've added here in the code, and I did this offline because otherwise this video is going to be too long. So what I did was to the JSON data, I started looking at the finish reason. And then what I said, well, if the reason was length, I'm going to output this code. If the reason was that it stopped, I'm going to output this. And in any other case, I'm just going to output a message about, yeah, well, I don't know what's going on here. Okay. And on top of that, I filled in with some of the nice feedback that we did in the previous video, where at certain points in the life of the program, I am adding to the request status, I'm adding whether if the request was started or whether if there was an error that needs to be shown here, or whether if we got some success. So if everything was well and we received enough responses for that prompt, etc., etc. So what you can see now, for example, is that I'm going to do an invisible city full of dreamful architects. Okay, I'm going to ask for a request, a long one, and it's going to take some time. Request has started here, and then we're going to get some completions. It takes some time. So one response received for this prompt, and you can see this is the answer, and this is once upon a time there was an invisible city full of dreamful architects, and blah blah blah, and it's actually quite good. And you can see that we have added this tiny text at the end, which is text generation stopped due to text length. So we reached the maximum amount of tokens that were allowed for this app. Okay, for this one. So maybe what I want to do is, just like I did in the chat before, I'm going to ask for another one, which is, can you tell me the script for a YouTube video where the host builds a web app using the text completion API in OpenAI? Can you tell me what that looks like? And then the request started, it's working, and this. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to build a web app using the text completion API in OpenAI. First, we'll need to create an OpenAI account. This will give us access to the API. Once we have the account, we need the key, that's the API, then we need to install the SDK, blah, blah, blah. Once we have the SDK, we'll use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to create it. We need to create a form that would allow us to input. This is very awesome. We use the API. Finally, we need to display the response. We use the API to display, and that's it. We've successfully built a web. Blah, blah. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found. Stop. That's pretty awesome. All right, so I guess that's what it is. All right. And can I get a few seconds to put this somewhere online? And here we go. So I used FTP to upload that full package of files to a server where I have the website of this YouTube channel, and now it's on the parametric.camp/GPT. It's the same app, so I'm going to paste here my API key, and I'm going to say, Ada, can you give me a request? And then it's now working online, and I could do DaVinci and I would get a better request. It's going to take a little longer, but it's going to do a better job, I believe. Okay. Well, this is great because now you have the capacity to have your own ChatGPT. You don't have to go through the one in OpenAI, whether if you're fine with that or not, whether if you want to contribute to the training and have what you're asking be saved in some database, or just do it. They're probably saving it in the database anyway with the API, but whatever. I'm just guessing this is nicer. It's also a nerdy thing to build your own ChatGPT, because maybe you want to make it a little cleaner and look more like a chat bot, and maybe like have a conversation with it, maybe integrate it in some larger web app that does other things, that listens to your voice. You can do voice too. There's a lot of things you can do. Okay. So beautiful. I think this is it. This is what I wanted to cover. How to build a web app that feels like ChatGPT and where you can have a conversation with a large language model and have text completed for yourself based on a prompt. I think this is great. I really had fun preparing these videos. And I think they're going to be really useful. I think I'm going to leave these apps living on parametric.camp. So there will probably be a link to this in the response, if you in the description of this video. If you want to try it out, you will have to get your own API key. You can find how to do that on this video, which is one of the ones in this playlist, having fun with DALL-E. And I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something. I hope you refreshed your HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and DOM skills. And if you're not comfortable with those skills yet, there's many resources out there that can help you do that. Maybe we will get to do that at some point in this channel. I don't have any of that yet, but I think it's great. And at any rate, the code for this whole thing is there's a link in the description of this video. So feel free to go check it out, modify it, make it look nicer, arguably, which I haven't done, and build something cool. If you build something cool, please, please, please share it with us in the comments of this video. On our Discord server especially, we have a community where we have conversations throughout the week, throughout the year, when I'm not live streaming, where we're not recording, and where people help each other and share a lot of the work that they do. So I would very much be very happy to see what you've built based on this video, okay? And with that, I think I am done with what I wanted to do. Thank you very much, and hopefully, if you liked this, maybe show some love, liking, subscribing, and all those things. And I hope to see you sometime in some other video, or I hope to see you in the chat while we are live streaming and recording these tutorials, or in any form that you wish. Thanks a lot, and see you in some other video. Bye bye.